Good morning everybody, my name's Pete. I sew under the label Pete Sews. Wonderful to be here again. Thank you so much for the Australian Sewing Guild putting on the Autumn Sewing Celebration. I hope everybody's had a wonderful year since our last gathering and you've got on the machines a lot and used all those new skills. I've certainly been plenty busy and doing a lot of alterations work these days. So that's why I'm dressed like this today in my jacket. I'd just like to be able to show you how I go through the process of tailoring a jacket. You can use this for a suit jacket like this, ladies' jackets, coats. Doesn't really matter what, the process is very much the same. It just varies slightly with the structure of things. So you can see this jacket that I've got here, right? It fits me relatively well. We just do up the first button there. You can see it fits me relatively well. However, it's a little bit loose through the back here. And the current style and fashion is for some things to be a little bit more fitted. Now, as I say, this one's pretty close already, but you might have one that's a bit too big. Okay, if it fits you well in the shoulders, but it's too big around your torso and your waist, then we can pull it in a little bit using this technique here. So, we're going to put this on the mannequin. I'm going to get the pins. We're going to get ourselves all set and ready to go. Okay, so we've got our jacket here now on the mannequin. This would obviously be best to do on yourself with a friend pinning, or on your friend if you're gonna tailor the jacket for them. So being that this is my jacket, I have to put it on here. Now I've already had a good look at this and I know how much I need to take it in. But basically we can alter this back seam that's through here. We can also alter these two side seams that come in under the arms here. So using this one here, and when I looked at it on myself, I don't need to do anything across here right up at the shoulders. I just want to bring it in a little through the waist. So I decide on how much I want to get there, and I start pinching in, and I think that's nice. That's got a good shape through there, and just start throwing some pins into it. You can adjust these pins as you go, but remember we're after a nice, neat, smooth curve. So we're just going to taper it a little bit less as we're coming out here to the point where our tapering stitch is going to begin from there. And then at the bottom here, we're going to bring it back out again. Now here's where my vent begins, so I can't taper it past there. So I might start just after that vent. And you can see this line. I'm going to come in about here, curve it up through there and stop at about that point there. Okay, when we look at our side seams, very much the same here. We might want to take a little bit in through here. We might want to take a little bit in through there. So I'm going to start at about this point here and just start tapering in from there. As we make our way down, I've got a slightly slimmer waist than this mannequin does, so I know I can come in a little bit more here. And bringing it back out of there. So this is the time to just take your time here, right? Go nice and slow and steady. Get your friend to help you with the pinnings. Do it in front of the mirror so you can see how much is going on. Make sure you're buttoned up at the front so you're working against that nicely. And what we're going to get is a much nicer shape through here. Match it on the other side seam over here, okay? And then we're good with that and we're ready to move into the cutting table. Okay, so now we've got our jacket here. What we're going to do is we're just going to measure how much we're going to take it in. First of all, starting from the bottom of the collar there, we're going to measure how far down our tapering seam begins. And I'm going to do 19 centimeters. So I need to mark my taper. I tend to draw on my whiteboard. You can do it like that. 190 mil down. Then we're going to measure the length of our taper. And it's going to come all the way down to the bottom of my vent, which is 30 centimeters or 300 mils. So I'm going to mark that there. And then I need to measure how far in we're coming. What's the deepest part of my taper? And that's going to be about here is the deepest part of my taper. And that's about 10 millimeters in. Okay. So we do that. We measure the other one as well. How far down here? Let's say 90 millimeters down. So we mark our taper 90 millimeters down. The length of our taper is, following the seam there, the length of our taper, let's say 170 millimeters. and the depth of our taper is, depth of our taper, we're probably only looking at about 6 millimeters, I'd say. Okay, so with all of those marked, it's now time for us to get inside our jacket. We're going to take the pins out, we're going to turn it inside out and see what it looks like. Okay, we've got our jacket inside out here, and now we need to get in. We need to get into all of this. Now there's two different ways that jackets are made. Sometimes they're made with the whole lining as one piece, and you can tell if they're attached at the shoulder seams. Now this one you can see, it's attached through here. So there's no point in opening up my sleeve. That's the last part that they put together. But if I went into there, I can't get through here. Now, if this is not attached and the lining is completely floating, you can open up that and turn the whole thing inside out through there. But I can't do that with this jacket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a little bit of this side lining seam here. All right, and then I'm going to be able to turn it inside out. The key to this is a nice, sharp, quick unpick. Yeah, you got to be really careful doing this. So you don't need to open up very much, but we just slip our quick unpick between some stitches in there. If you can get the first couple going, then turn it around, put your blunt edge on the inside. It's just something that not everybody is aware of. Rip the seam a little bit like that. Doesn't need to be much more than that, that's probably enough. Now that's one of the seams we're going to play with, and the other two are in there. So we need to turn the whole thing inside out through this hole. I reach in and just start getting it all out. And you start seeing all the magical hidden wonder that goes inside a suit jacket. And there we go, there's our seams there. Get my other tail out there. So the whole thing inside out, we can now see our seams. And they're the three that we're going to be tailoring. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to press these flat. I'm going to start with the middle seam here, the center back seam. Pick this up, get everything else out of the way, and then if I press that flat all the way from the vent all the way up, then I can see what I'm dealing with. Oop, sorry about that. Trusty iron comes in the way. This one's been pressed like that for quite some time. Okay, so now that we've got this, we're going to mark up our adjustment. I tend to use tailor's chalk for this because I find it a little bit more accurate than just using pins. We refer back to our measurements over here. So our centre back seam, we wanted to come down 190 millimeters before we began. So I'm going to find the top of the top of the jacket, the bottom of the collar there, and I'm going to measure down. So from this point here, going as accurately as I can, I'm going to measure 190 millimeters down. Is that point just there? Going to mark that with my chalk. That's where we begin. Then I was 300, which is all the way down to the vent there. So we just double check that that's where we're going to. 300, which is all the way down to the vent there. Now, good tip for you, if you have, if it's difficult to see your threads, use your chalk and just mark the current stitch line along the side of the threads there, and that means you can see where you need to measure from. All right, so now that I've got that there, I then need to come in 10 millimeters. Now I remember it was 10 millimeters is my measurement for how far to bring my stitch in there. So 10 millimeters, I look roughly for the middle of those points there. Okay, you can measure this if you want to, so I'd come 150 millimeters down. And I'm going to mark 10 millimeters in, just there, okay? So that's where I want my stitch to come to. Now, to try to make it as accurate as possible, I'm going to do a nice, gentle curve. I just do this by eye. If you'd like, you can actually measure at various points where you're coming to. And then again from the bottom, we come from our existing stitch line and we're going to come up, up, up until we land there. And that's going to be where my new stitch line goes. So now what I'd do is I'd repeat that exact process on the other two seams. So there's my side seam. I'd measure down the amount that I measured previously, the length of my tapered seam and the depth of my tapered seam, just like that. Come over to the other side seam here, press it flat, measure down the required distance, mark it all up, all right? So I'll go and do that now and then we'll come back and get ready for some sewing. Okay, so I've marked up my 3 seams now that I want to do. I've got my side seams marked up there, and I've got my centre seam marked up. So they're all marked up in the same way. I'm ready to do some stitching. When you do this, just make sure that take the time to make sure that the rest of the jacket or the coat is out of the way. You've got all the lining, you've got the sleeves, you've got everything else is inside there. So just take the time to make sure it's out of the way. If you need to, you can actually pin through that stitching line if you like, just to make sure that it stays nice and straight and true. So keeping that out of the way, I'm going to start up above my marker here and stitch down the existing line, and then I'm just going to follow my new chalk line out there and then come back and end past my taper seam when I come back into the existing one here. So getting this underneath the foot, pop that in there. Back tack to get you started. Again, take the time to make sure it's all sitting nice and smooth and easy. Go at a good stitch speed for you. Make sure it's sitting nice and smoothly all the way down till you've come back into your existing stitch line. Put your back tack into end. Okay, so you can see my new stitch line coming in, tapering in from my old stitch line there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other ones, and then I'll show you what we're going to do after that. Okay, so I've done my 3 lines of stitching. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the old stitching. So you can see I've got one line coming down there on the side seam. I've got it right through my back seam just there, and then the other one down the side seam. So all we want to do, you can break a stitch in here. So just wiggle your unpicker underneath there, flick up a couple of those stitches, and then what you're able to do is to run your quick unpick straight up there. Now here's a good tip for you: when you're unpicking a nice big long straight seam like this, just pop it underneath the foot of your sewing machine, okay? And that gives you a little bit of tension, and you can actually keep that nice and straight, which makes it a lot easier to run your quick unpick up. Yeah, so we slip our quick unpick in there. Done. Okay, and you just come and neaten up the end. So you unpick those last few stitches down there towards the point where you've finished your tapering stitch. You can see the new stitches coming in there and the old stitches are coming out. That's what we're doing, and we go all the way up to the end there. Trying to get those last few just so we can press it nice and flat. The key is in the pressing. Alright, and there we go, back to where we started. So we're just going to now finish the 3 of those, right? I'll undo the other one of those and the other one of those, and then we're going to press it flat. We'll have a look at that in a moment. Okay, so I've unpicked those 3 old seams, and now what I need to do is press it flat in order to get a really nice finish on it. So find the hole where you went in, find the part that you need to press, which is just here. Now I work on a sleeve board like this, really handy thing to have if you do a lot of this sort of work. If you don't, find something that's a similar sort of shape to this, mount it securely, cover it in a towel, you'll be fine. All right, so we slip our jacket onto here, and this is where it really pays to take some time to get this to sit nicely. So work that all around so that that can sit open just there, and that's what I want to press. We bring our iron over, press, press, press like that. Look at that. So since it's only a small adjustment, there's no need to cut any of the excess off. If you're doing a really big adjustment, then you might actually find it helpful to cut off the excess fabric if you think there's going to be too much. Or if it's a really thick coat sort of fabric, like a thick woolen coating fabric, then maybe there'll be a bit of extra bulk in there. So same thing here. These 3 seams, just a few minutes ago, we pressed them flat to be able to stitch them. Now we're going to press them back to open again. The key is in the pressing. That's the difference. Loads of steam. There we go. And then we get our third little side seam over here, work it around, get all the extra layers out from underneath it. There's the part I want to press open. Away we go like that. There we go. Beauty. Okay, so now that I've done that, we're going to turn it back in the right way and see how it looks. Find the hole. Best tip for this, reach up, find the collar, start from there. Wriggle your lining down, wriggle your lining down. It just sleeves out of there. Turn it back around like that. Pop your shoulder pads back out. If you've got a big overcoat that you're working with, this can be a real challenge getting it in the right way and back out again. And so now, when we look at this, you wouldn't pick the difference, would you? Okay, nice, neat, straight seams that are just a little bit more tailored than they were before. So we're happy with that. Okay, now I'm just going to close it up. So this hole that I made earlier, just move the old iron out of the way. This hole that I made earlier, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to top stitch right near the edge. If you want to make it easier, you can actually press this so that it sits up for you. And this is right on the inside, no one's going to notice it. As I say, we're just going to stitch down here just to close up the lining again. If you press this, it helps hold it in the right place for you. There we go. Let's jump on the machine and have a look at that. Okay, so from above the part where I opened it, just come a little way up there, right on the edge, just a few millimeters of seam allowance. The closer you can get it, the better, because we don't want to do too much, because we don't want the lining to pull against the jacket. Now there's usually a little bit of space in a lining here, but let's not test it to just past where you did that. There we go. Look at that. No one would know the difference. All right. We better put it on and have a look how we did. Take off these things. Now, if you remember beforehand, there was a little bit of looseness in the back. Oh, straight away, I can feel that that's better. Do up my first button there. So you can see now, we've got a better shape through the back. Yeah, so that's sitting nicely smooth and neat down my back, and it really shows off the shape of the jacket a lot better. So that, guys, is a nice simple process for tailoring a jacket or a coat or something like that. Best of luck. Please feel free to shoot me any questions and comments below in the discussions. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone else's contributions to the Autumn Sewing celebration, and thank you once again to the Australian Sewing Guild for putting on this fantastic event. If anyone wants to get in contact with me about the work that I do, you can find me anywhere on the socials, anywhere on the web, just under Pete Sews, because that's what I do. Thanks heaps, guys. Have a great day.